And welcome back to the All About Photography podcast, where we discuss anything and everything photography related. With a new episode coming to you every Monday at midnight Greenwich Mean Time on your favorite podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and we're also now listed on Google Podcasts as well. And for those of you who prefer to watch the video of the podcast, it is also available at the same time on the Pien VC Photography channel. So for those of you watching on YouTube, hello! And I made sure not to hit the mic this week. I should see how long I can keep that going for until I actually do hit it. This week's topic came up because if you're in the photography community, you'll know that a few weeks ago, at the time of recording this anyway, we had the 5-day sale where you get thousands of dollars worth of photography courses for the price of about $100. And the sale comes up every year. And it got me thinking, should you actually go and invest in a photography course? And absolutely, yes, you should. But, and there's always a but, there are a few things to look out for before you go ahead and purchase them. And I'll try and make this episode as easy as possible for you to follow. So first I'll talk about what to look out for in a photography course. And then I'll talk about why you should invest in them, even if you're just a hobbyist and you've just gotten a camera for the first time. But then also why you should invest in a course from a business side of it. And from the business side of it, I'm going to go more into why you really need to also invest in a business course. Not just a photography course, but a business course. And you'll understand what I mean when we get there. Now, when it comes to courses, photography courses, any course for that matter, there are hundreds to choose from, possibly thousands. I've lost track. I see lots of courses come up left, right, and center, especially on like Facebook and Instagram ads and even YouTube ads, that I lose track of how many there I've seen because after a while they all just blend together and I start ignoring them. But when I want to look for a course that I want to do, there's a few things I always look out for. First of all, is it from a business or is it from an individual? Now, if it's from a business, I will look to see if that business has actually gone and created a few courses that have gotten good reviews. In saying that, and this applies to all courses, not just from a business, but also from an individual, if a course has only got glowing reviews, avoid it like the plague because those reviews are almost certainly bought and paid for and not genuine. It's just like a restaurant that only has 5-star reviews. That's probably not realistic, and those reviews aren't genuine. It's the same as if a course is absolutely atrocious and only has negative reviews. The question should be, why has it only got negative reviews? Because I find it very hard to believe how a course can only have absolutely horrible reviews or a course has only amazing reviews. If there's a decent balance or there's lots of good reviews but a few bad ones, I always have a look at the bad ones to see why they haven't gotten a good review. Is it because the customer's expectations weren't met versus what the course delivered, or whatever the case may be? All right, and that's the one thing that you need to bear in mind more than anything when you are looking at courses. What is the course offering and what are you hoping to get out of it? Because if what you're hoping to get out of it isn't matched up with what the course is offering, then that's probably not the best course for you. On the other hand, though, if a course promises to do A, B, C, D, and you get A, B, C, D, brilliant. That's a good investment in your photography journey. But if they promised A, B, C, D, and they haven't delivered on it, then yeah, I can understand a bad review or why you're not happy with it. So that is one thing to bear in mind when you are looking at any courses. What is the course offering to deliver to you versus what are you hoping to get out of it? Because you do have to manage your expectations when you get a course. And to use landscape photography as an example, just because I myself am a landscape photographer, if a course says, if today is the first day you've picked up a camera for the very first time, and within a week's time or a week's worth of courses, whatever the case is, you're going to be creating images similar to the likes of Thomas Heaton, Peter Lick, Nigel Danson, Peter Iverson, all these great, amazing landscape photographers. They are probably full of crap. Any course that promises you to go from zero to hero in such a short time frame is full of crap. The only way you can get to that level, if you've just picked up a camera, is to go out there and practice it many, 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 many times over. It could take weeks, it could take months, it could take years. It depends on the individual, how much quickly they learn, how quickly they then apply it, how quickly they can grow from it. Because you also have to remember, your growth is not linear. It's more like a wave. Sometimes you'll grow really fast, sometimes you'll grow really slow. As long as you're growing is the most important thing, but it's not always going to be in a straight line that you can actually measure it, put it in a graph, and it's a perfectly straight line. It's going to be like the ocean with waves everywhere. Probably not the best image, but I hope you know what I mean. All right, so that's just one thing to bear in mind. When you're looking at the reviews, if they're only positive or only negative, be a bit wary as to the course itself, especially if they're only positive, because I can guarantee that's definitely not those aren't real reviews. If the course is coming from an individual, like prime example, let's say I was to try and sell a course, try and Google that individual as much as you can. See if they've got a decent social media following, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Vero, whatever the case is. See the sorts of images they create and make sure they're actually the sorts of images you want to create as well. And that they've got a decent following on those specific channels that I mentioned or other channels as well. And that you can actually see their final images. If you can't find out anything about that individual promoting a course and they're saying that they're going to teach you how to do something, run the other way. Because if their course cannot back up their own work and they can't show you and teach you how to go from A to B and they don't have anything to show for it, that person is just trying to take your money and run. Right? I'm not saying I will do that. I will do a course. I might do one day. I've actually considered doing a course on landscape photography and how to use a camera, because I know when I first started a camera, it was an absolute nightmare. But if you can't find anything on the individual and there's no images to show what they can create and what they're trying to teach you to create, run the other way. But when you are looking at courses, regardless of whether it's for a hobby or a business or the genre, whatever the case may be, if you can, try and find one where you have to actually be on site and not just online. And I say that because, yes, for the past 2 years or so, that may have been a bit hard to do. But when you're actually on site, you're not just with the teacher, but you're with other students and you can get a lot out of it. Like if you're stuck or the teacher has explained something and it just doesn't click for you for whatever reason, there may be another student that can help explain it, or you can even get the teacher to explain it in a different way versus sitting there in front of your computer or tablet or whatever the case is, watching the course and then going, huh? What are they talking about? I don't get it. And then you have to try and email the teacher, get them to explain that part, and hopefully you've communicated. You see the rabbit hole I'm going down here? This is what happens if you do an online course versus being on site, is that when you get stuck, it's a lot harder to try and get it fixed to make sure that you start going down the right path again. So if you can, do a course on site versus online. I know that's not easy for everybody and there may not be actual courses on site that you can go to, but it's just something that you should look for. If you can go on site to learn something, go on site. And from my own experience, I have purchased quite a few courses before. I won't say who the bad courses were from, because before I do that, I should at least reach out to the course provider, provide some feedback, let them know what I didn't like about it, see what their response is before I go and criticize them, because that simply wouldn't be fair on the creator. It could generally be that the course just didn't meet my expectations for what I was hoping to get out of it. In one case, it was literally the same 5 minutes repeated over 6 hours, so that's why I didn't learn anything. But as I said, I'm not going to reach out to that person and criticize them or say who they are without at least giving them the chance to defend themselves first. But a few good courses I have invested in that I thought are decent value for money, and neither of these two businesses I'm about to mention have sponsored me or promoting me to say this. This is purely my own experience, so please don't think I'm getting any form of payment for saying this. One of them is Skillshare. All right, and Skillshare, if anyone who uses it knows that it's not purely a photography course provider. They provide courses on everything. You can do business, video, photography, sound editing, creative. There's lots of things, but the good thing is there are so many different courses on there that you may hopefully find something you like. I have come across a few on there that actually were pretty good, and then I came across a few where the course was more about the creator story and less about actually learning photography. So if you want to learn about the creator, then yes, that's great. But if you want to learn photography, then it's not so great. And the other one, but this one is more specific to fashion and product photography. And I only did it because I considered product photography for a while, and that's Carl Taylor Education. All right. The thing I like about Carl Taylor's courses is that guy really knows his stuff. When it comes to lighting and angles and composition, especially when it comes to products, he knows how to set up a scene very, very well, but he also knows how to explain why he set it up in that particular way too. I know it's very hard to replicate the type of images he creates unless you have the studio and the lighting adjusters that he has, or the light boxes and the snoots and the grids and everything else. That without his sort of resources at hand, it is very hard to try and replicate it, but he does show how you can do it if you've only got like one light as an example and to fix the rest in Photoshop. And the good thing is with both of them, they are subscription based versus a huge lump sum up front. So if you're budget conscious, that is something you can factor in. And if you did want to learn product photography, then yes, I can highly recommend it because I actually did learn a lot from it, even though I haven't pursued that particular genre. Those are the things to look out for in a photography course. Can you find decent information about the provider online, whether it's the business or the individual? Are there only good reviews? Are they only bad reviews? Do they have a balance? If it's only good or only bad, real red flags, and just be aware of that before you go and hand over any money because you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Because if it's a course that's only got good reviews, then I normally tend to stay away from it. And if it's a course that only got bad reviews, there's probably a reason for that as well. But if there's a decent mix of good and bad reviews, then you're probably onto a keeper at that point. Yeah, but then also, as I said though, if it is from an individual, can you actually find their own images on any social media site that shows the sort of images they can create, and are they what you want to create as well? And also, and this is an important one, is what the course is offering the same as what you're hoping to get out of it? Because if that match is not there, you will not walk away a happy buyer, and you'll think that the course is shit, for want of a better phrase. But in reality, they've promised A, B, C, D. You've wanted C, D, E, F. All right, you've wanted more than what they've offered, or they're offering something slightly different to what you're hoping to get out of it. So those are just a few things to bear in mind when it comes to buying a photography course. Now, if you're a hobbyist, I promise I'll get to you first before I go talk to the business side of it. Yes, you should absolutely invest in a photography course regardless of how long you've had your camera for, because there are so many benefits to doing so. If you can do it on site, like I mentioned, that is one of the best places, because that way you have someone who's hopefully experienced as a photographer and can teach you everything you need to know about your camera. Whether it's a DSLR or mirrorless is irrelevant. What they need to be able to teach you is, this is the exposure triangle, and this is how each of those settings will affect your photos. And that's your aperture, your shutter speed, your ISO. What happens if you make the aperture too fast but you haven't adjusted anything else, and how will that affect your image? How does changing aperture from f1.8 to f22 affect your image? What happens when you bump your ISO up to 25,000? I hope nobody ever has to do that, because if you've seen my images at ISO 25,000, you will know they're shit. Or 25,600 if you want to be pedantic about it, but you know what I mean. And they can also teach you the difference between a wide angle and a zoom lens, and the compression side of it, and the field of view, and the distortion that comes with it as well. Or like when I would take pictures in Sydney at 15 millimeters and the buildings are massively distorted, I would go and chuck on my 24-105, zoom in and do a panorama, provided there's no moving water, and the buildings roll straight, and I don't need to worry about fixing that in post. They need to be able to show you things like that when you go and do a photography course. And that way you can learn straight away before you go and spend hours and hours and hours watching videos on YouTube, which I'll get to in a second, the version of YouTube versus courses for a hobbyist. You can see it, you can practice it, and you can learn from it right then and there versus spending more time doing it on your own. As someone who's done it self-taught versus going to a course and did a course later, do the course first. Don't worry about the self-taught. All right, that'll just save you so much time and headache and frustration if you can learn from someone right off the get-go, instead of trying to teach yourself and then learning from someone and thinking, holy crap, I've been doing it wrong the whole time. All right, because another benefit or potential benefit from doing a course on site versus online is you may have photo walk days where you go out into the city you live in and you learn how to take photos that are different to what you would just see with your own eyes. Like, what do a lot of people do with cameras? They are walking around, they see the picture, or they see something nice, they put the camera up to their eye, they have it in auto mode, and they go click. But then if you go on a photo walk, they might teach you how to put it in aperture mode, or shutter mode, or completely manual, or just even change the height of the camera. Instead of eye level, go down to waist level, or knee level, or ground level, or just move a little bit to one side. Like if you had moved 10 meters to the right, does it change your image a lot? And you have a much better image out of it? That's something you wouldn't learn if you just did it online and didn't have the chance to go on a photo walk. And there's also the potential benefit that you might walk out of there with a few new friends as well that you probably never would have met if you didn't go to that course. So as a hobbyist, there are lots of benefits to doing a photography course. You get to learn exactly how your camera works, how lenses will affect your images, and how to try and take pictures differently compared to if you just put the camera up to your eye and hit click when it's in auto mode, and then go and change everything later on. Because I can honestly say, when I learned how to go into full manual mode, I learned how to control absolutely every single aspect, not just the exposure triangle, but the white balance, the metering, all of that. In the end, I normally just go auto white balance and balance metering just because it's so much easier to work with. But the way I was able to change my images because I learned how to do that, everything became a lot better. So if you can do a photography course that will teach you everything about the camera, about lenses and composition, lighting, all of that, then do so. Because that way you will learn a lot more and you will learn it faster. I know some people say, well, why should I pay for a course? I can learn all of it on YouTube, which, yes, you can. I'll be the first one to admit, yes, you can, and I'm not denying that. But this is where the difference between a course and a YouTube video comes in. With a course, you've got dedicated time, so you have to go up there because you've paid money to attend. You have to go, you have to attend, and then you hopefully learn something from it. When it comes to YouTube, you've got to try and figure out what question to ask to find the right video to watch by someone who talks to you in a way that you understand. All right, because if you've done any research on YouTube, you'll know that if you just search how to use a camera, thousands upon tens of thousands upon hundreds of thousands of videos will pop up. And then you've got to troll through those videos to try and find out which one is actually showing you what it is you want to know. You could go through 20 videos before you find the right one, and that's who knows how much time you've wasted going through those 20 videos. And it could be that you could just ask the wrong question, and the next video was showing up, and you may have given up by then and said, you know what, this is too hard, I'm just going to go back to using my phone. Right? And the same happens if you do an online course, is that and it's also the same if you do an online course, because if you factor in the time that you would have to spend if you're doing it self-taught through YouTube versus having a 6-hour course that you can access anytime you want, or less than 6 hours, whatever the case may be, but you can access it anywhere you want, and it tells you exactly what you're going to learn in each part of the course. You know exactly where to go to when you have a question or when you want to learn something. And then if you do have a question, they'll probably have an email address where you can contact them to ask your question. Whereas if it's on YouTube, I know this sounds weird that I'm bagging out YouTube, but I'm not. I'm just trying to compare the difference between a dedicated course and searching YouTube. I'm not bagging out YouTube because I'm on YouTube and I enjoy it, right? But at least when you have a course, it's because it's a dedicated resource just for learning. YouTube is a search engine that's meant to give you information and entertain you and teach you something. That is the difference between the two. YouTube is self-taught, where you've got to find the information yourself. A course has everything outlined for you and someone you can reach out to when you get stuck. So should a hobbyist invest in a course? Absolutely, you get a lot from it. But as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to what to look out for in courses, do your research before you actually go ahead and buy it, please. I don't want to have anyone come back to me and say, you told me to go and buy a course and it was shit. It's like, well, what research did you do? None. Sorry, there's nothing I can do to help you there. And even if you did do your research and you weren't happy with it, I'm not actually telling you what courses to buy. I'm only telling you what 2 sources I learned from a lot that I liked, but I'm not saying actually go and buy them because I'm not sponsored by them. And even if they were to sponsor me, but I didn't like them, I still want to tell you to buy them. If you're a photographer who wants to take this from side hustle or creative outlet or a hobby into a business, there's one thing I need to say to you first, and that is do a business course before you do any other photography courses. Because the minute you've decided to run this as a business, it is a business first and a creative outlet second. If you try to always run it as a creative outlet and then a business, it will never grow as a business because you're not applying the business strategies to it that you need to grow it as a business. Take this from someone who's tried doing it and kept doing it as a creative outlet and not a business. You know how long it takes to grow it if you don't treat it as a business? It doesn't grow. It'll stagnate, it'll die. If it's something that you're doing on the side and you don't need it to grow to survive, that's fine. But if you're putting all of your eggs in one basket, you need it to grow or you're not going to survive. I know you can always go and find a 9-to-5 job later or whatever the case is, but do you really want to, instead of grow this, if you want to do this as a business, right? If you want to do this as a business, you've got to do a business course first, because they'll teach you so much more than a dedicated photography course with one business class will teach you. All right. A business side will teach you about the accounting side of it to make sure that, your taxes and all of your payments are up to date so that you don't get hit by any fines from your local tax office for not paying your taxes properly. It'll teach you about the insurance side of it to make sure that your equipment is insured so that if anything happens to your gear or lenses or lights or whatever the case is, Your insurance replaces it for you, assuming your insurance doesn't rip you off, that is. It'll teach you about the legal side of it so that if a client ever threatens to sue you, you can be like, well, you know what? You signed the contract. You can try and sue me, but you're going to lose because you got the contract that you signed. It'll teach you about the marketing side of it so other people can be aware of your business, whether you're doing business to business or business to consumer. At least if you understand marketing, how it works, and how to get your name out there, you have a better chance of growing it. And then it'll also teach you the sales side of it, how you can sell your product without feeling like you're ripping off your customer. Or if you don't care if you're ripping off your customer, that's irrelevant, which I hope none of you are. But you will never get as much information out of one business class in a photography course as you will by doing a dedicated business course. I cannot stress that enough. Because like I've said 3, 4, I don't know how many times now, the minute you want to make this a business, you treat it as a business first and a creative second, not the other way around, or the business won't grow. And in saying that, any business course that promises you to make you a millionaire overnight is full of shit. I'm sorry, I'm part of my French, part of my language, but that's the reality. You want to become a millionaire, it takes lots of work, right? Lots of work. There's so many millionaires out there who do courses and tell you how to do it. None of them became an overnight success. You want to know who's a millionaire overnight? Someone who's inherited it, not someone who started their own business. That's the difference between the two. So anyone who promises you overnight success, run for the hills because that person is lying to your face. I know it sounds like a bit of a rant, but it's something I'm really passionate about because as someone who did try running it as a creative first and a business second, you know where it got me after 6 months? Nowhere. So that's why you've got to run it as a business first and then a creative second. And I cannot stress how important it is to learn about all those aspects I mentioned. The accounting, the legal, the marketing, the sales, especially the legal. I've seen so many cases where just because I'm part of Facebook groups and I have no reason to believe the people posting this are lying, but they're saying the customers are trying to do things like not pay them for work delivered, but the contract says so. It's like, you know what? Because the contract says so, they can take them to court and say, you didn't pay me like you're supposed to, and I'm going to send my lawyer after you until you do pay, or whatever the case may be. Right? Because if you do not have the legal backing, either through your own knowledge or the help of a lawyer, I would say that unless you're a trained lawyer, go find a lawyer to help you out, right? Just to make sure you've got all your bases covered. That without that, no matter what happens, you don't have 2 legs to stand on. Once you've done your business course, then yes, go do whatever photography course you want to do if you want to expand your skill set. If you're a landscape photographer like myself, but then you want to go do wedding photography, go and do a wedding photography course. Because that is one of the hardest gigs out there from what I've seen. You need to be able to do portrait photography, product photography, right? Because you got portraits for snapping the bride and the groom, making sure that you've set them up properly, you've lit them properly, whether through natural light or flash or whatever the case is, to get amazing images for them that they're paying for. You need to do product photography because you want to create nice photos of like the rings and the dress and the suits and the flowers and everything else that goes on in a wedding that they have nice photos for. You need to be quick and learn how to change the settings on your camera quickly so that you capture those candid moments that aren't always posed for. That will help recreate those memories further down the line. Sometimes some of the best pictures I've seen from wedding photographers isn't the ones that are posed for, it's the candid ones they've captured during the ceremony and the reception, where the people had no idea the camera was on them. You see them acting naturally, and those are the pictures that people love the most. Not the ones where it's like, oh, let's stand in the archway, or let's stand here, let's pose. It's the candid ones of the bride and the groom or other members of the party, socializing, having a good time, celebrating the day. I haven't done wedding photography. I've just done some research into it. But that's just an example of how you would do it if you wanted to go any branch into a new part of photography, right? And also, like I mentioned earlier, those 2 sources I mentioned, both Carl Taylor and Skillshare, if you wanted to expand your photography knowledge, those are good places to go. Photography in general, I'd probably say go to Skillshare. I know I'm promoting them, but that's because they are a genuinely good resource. I wouldn't suggest them if I thought they were shit, because I'm not going to waste your time and say, go check out Skillshare when it's absolutely useless. Because if it's useless, I ain't going to use it, and I'm not going to tell you to use it. It's that simple. Don't forget though, I'll say it again, I know I've said it 50 million times by now. If you want to run your photography side hustle as a business, run it as a business first and a creative second. That's the most important thing you need to remember. And now to wind it down, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I know I've covered a lot, but that's because when it comes to courses, there is just so much to cover, Or like I know other people that have said, should I go and buy this photography course? And the first thing I ask them is, what do you want to get out of it? Not how much does it cost, not who's it by, what do you want to get out of it? Because if they can't tell me what they want to get, and I can't see the course itself, I cannot say whether I think it's a good investment or not. The same applies to whether you're a hobbyist or whether you're running it as a business. All right, and let me know what you think. If you're listening to the podcast, as always, my email address is available in show notes for you below. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're more than welcome to leave a comment below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, regardless of if it's a YouTube comment or an email. I'd love to hear from you. And if you do have any feedback on how you would like to see this podcast grow or any changes you would like to make, I would love to hear from you as well. You're more than welcome to leave me feedback or leave a review if it's on Apple Podcasts, because I think on Spotify you can't actually leave a review. But on YouTube you can leave a comment. Tell me I'm crap. Tell me I'm great. Whatever it may be. Preferably great, not crap. That's all, but nobody wants to hear they're crap. Everybody wants to hear they're great. And also, don't forget, if you would like to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes, don't forget to follow us on either your favorite podcasting platform, because it's free to follow regardless which one you use, or subscribe to the Pien VC Photography channel, because on all platforms, a new episode does go up every Monday at midnight Greenwich Mean Time, so at least you know exactly when they're coming out so you can schedule it accordingly. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you on the next episode. For those of you on YouTube, bye-bye! And I'll see you next week. Have a good one.